Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Awesome. So we're live for today's A Coffee with Karen. This is where I interview a number of coaches, consultants, therapists or healers from the conventional to the more woo-woo to share a little bit about them, their story, what they do, who they help. And this week we have Ahuva. So Ahuva, can you share with the audience a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you do?
Sure. So I'm Ahuva Hershkop. I am a registered dietitian, a pediatric registered dietitian, and a burnout coach for high achieving women. So I help people who are sick of feeling like they are just, constantly living on the brink of burnout but are really scared that, if they step back from that, if they don't keep with the hustle, the grind, all the things, that they're never going to have the professional impact, achievement, goals that they want. And I help them build a life that they love while they also get to, enjoy the professional impact that they want to have. And I am also a mom of 3 little kiddos.
3 little? Oh, what ages?
I have almost 6-year-old twins and a 2-year-old.
Wow. So, burnout. Have
Yes.
you been there?
Oh, have I? Yes. I don't teach anything that I don't know. I found myself, I didn't find myself pregnant. I found out that I was pregnant with my third the week before the COVID lockdowns. Was working in my private nutrition practice while taking care of 2 little kiddos. We all just did what we all did, which was just keep on keeping on and keep going and just keep pushing and keep hustling with everything that was going on. And eventually my, son went to daycare and I said, "What's my first name again?" And, really realized that I had hit that wall. And so now a lot of what was motivating me to continue pushing was I don't want to step back and lose everything that I've worked hard to build in my professional practice. And so that's really where, this has come to, like, helping women to build and have that impact that they want to have without feeling like they have to, keep on grinding and hating their life in the process, basically.
Oh. So burnout, I get it. I'm sure I've gone through burnout more than one occasion. And you're right. I think and I'm not saying obviously men suffer from it too as well. But
1,000%.
But for women, especially with kids, there's just so much pressure on us, isn't there?
I think there's just so much pressure on us. And I think that a lot of burnout can happen in professional spaces. It can happen because of, certain responsibilities, things that they have, like what people have to do. Like, it's not necessarily, I always say it's not necessarily gender specific. I just happen to, predominantly my coaching practice is working with women, but a lot of the, people pleasing, a lot of the, like, show up for everybody else and just be happy about it and put your needs last. A lot of the ways that we are societally conditioned as women often does have us running headfirst into burnout, right? There's only so long that you can go with just put your needs last. And eventually one day your day will come before, you burn out.
Yeah. And what would you say? What are the typical warning signs? Because do you find that many people don't realize they're in burnout until they're burnt out?
I think that specifically for the people that I work with, a lot of whom are in corporate spaces, a lot of whom are high achievers, it's really hard to admit or even see. Not that it's like they're aware of it and they're just not admitting it, but to even see that they're approaching burnout, it was for me as well, because you're still doing everything really well, right? You don't go from being an A+ student to like an F student overnight, right? And so it is and can be really difficult for people who are looking externally. If you say to somebody like, "Hey, I feel like," if I were to say to somebody, "I think you're burning out," and they were like, "But my kids are still fed well, and I'm still doing all the housework, and I'm still showing up at my job, I'm still doing it all well," to admit that they're on the way to burnout. And I think that's the really big issue. I mean, in so many things, but specifically when we're talking about burnout is when you are looking at like, okay, what are you doing in a day? That's often going to be the last thing to go, right? High achievers don't typically, and most people don't all of a sudden just say like, I'm burnt out, I'm done. They'll keep pushing as hard as they can. And so really the question is, how are you feeling about the day to day, right? Are the things that you used to have more patience with your, if you're a parent with your kids, suddenly they're annoying you on the first, the first time they do it. Okay, like, kids whine. If the first time, okay, after 10 times they whine, you're like, oh my God, please make it stop. But if after the first time that they say something, you're like finding yourself snapping, if the work that you used to love suddenly is just like really not fulfilling and you're like, I don't know why, because I really actually enjoy this thing, right? It's a lot of that demotivating feeling when you get to a certain point when you're like, I don't even want to. And it's weird because normally I do want to. Normally that's when we're about to hit burnout.
I mean, what? I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, we do it to ourselves. Why do you think this is? Is it just that we put too many demands on ourselves and not enough time spending in self-care? We come last.
Yeah, I think there is like the culture of we come last, right? Like we hear so much about, especially for people who are parents, but for women in general, like we're sort of judged by how we show up in service to other people. How well do you take care of the people around you, right? And I think the second piece is that we live in a space, in a society, in a culture where women often don't feel empowered to define themselves. And so we're constantly borrowing everybody else's definition of ourselves. But then you walk down the magazine aisle and there's, some beach body that you're supposed to have. And there's a home magazine for the home that you're supposed to have. And there's a business magazine with the Fortune 500 CEO that you're supposed to be in. There's all of these, and we're constantly just trying to find who we are and be things the right way, instead of on purpose defining who we are and who we want to be, and then moving towards that. And so when we can turn inwards and really start redefining that, it just makes everything easier and can make such radical shifts in our lives.
Right. And so what are the pitfalls? What happens? So somebody is hitting burnout. I mean, is it a real problem, or are there actual, issues going on in the body? What are the negative effects from it?
So I'm not the expert to talk on all of those things, although, because I'm not a diagnostician, or I'm not but there's lots of evidence. I was just talking about this with somebody else earlier of, Gabor Mate's work. He is a doctor who talks a lot about the physical manifestations of a lot of the burnout that women specifically experience. So higher diagnosis of certain cancers, other conditions, because of actually like holding of emotions and not actually allowing themselves to express emotions, not letting things move through. There's a lot of work that has been done and is done, and a lot of literature on the impacts of actually our physical health on the things that are letting us burn out. So, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people sort of still see it as like, well, what's the big deal? So I have a couple of like really hard years where I hate life, and then I get, and then eventually I'll get the promotion, or I'll get the this, or I'll get the. And the reality is that there is a much bigger impact on ourselves, on our health, on our communities, on our families, when we are really reaching that burnout zone.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, stress. The hormone cortisol does a lot of damage, and we're just not designed, are we, to stay with cortisol in our body? It doesn't happen in the rest of the animal kingdom, right? If they're running away from a predator, they've got cortisol racing through their veins. But as soon as the threat is gone, that's it. They stop. They've released it through the run, and then they head down and
they move along.
Start grazing. They're back to normal. Whereas we tend to be, maybe not with the extent of having to run from a real threat to your life, but having that consistent flow of a certain amount of cortisol in your body. I mean, it makes total sense. We're not designed to be that way. So if all the energy is going to the extremities, ready to fight, flight, freeze, Where's the energy to heal, digest,
Exactly.
get creative? Like you said, be patient with your
Yeah.
kids, all of that. So just that one hormone, is gonna cause a lot of upset, which yeah, long term, I can imagine it
Yeah.
will be. It's going to affect your immune system. So I can believe that certain cancers can. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a good outcome. It's not a good outcome for anybody to have that amount of cortisol in their system
Exactly.
that consistently. Do you think how new an issue do you think this is?
I think that, I mean, I think that there's a lot of good that's come in the last couple of years with social media and with some of the transitions that have come over, COVID and changes to work, workplaces and all of that. And I think it's made it so much worse for burnout. Because, with social media, like, again, to your point, we even in human societies, like, forget our animal past, but you only ever had like 3 people that you could compare yourself to, right? So
Mm,
the way of doing things right was always very definite. There were maybe 3 people that you were ever gonna see in your lifetime, and you're like, "Oh, that's what a butcher does. That's what
mm,
a woman in society does." We were never meant to compare ourselves to 2 million people.
ah,
I even
yeah.
think in terms of, when we think about body image and self-esteem, when I look at kids even who are growing up now, I'm like, I had the 15 girls in my class to compare myself to, not all of social media everywhere.
Yeah. Didn't think
So
of that.
when we're thinking about perfectionists and people pleasers who are trying to do things so, so, so right, you go on um, Instagram and you see 2 million different opinions on what right means.
Yeah,
Like the constant, like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, I'm supposed to do that, I'm supposed to do that, I'm supposed to be
yeah.
doing that. And you're trying to do it all the time has been made infinitely worse. I think specifically, I mean, we've seen tons of literature on the fact that women are more stressed than ever after the COVID pandemic, because of how it
Oh,
impacted their responsibilities at home. Um,
okay.
and like a lot of companies and families like falling back into traditional gender norms that weren't even seen before COVID, as well as just accessibility of people through technology. I mean, it's fantastic
Mm,
you and I can have this conversation in different places, but has also meant that whereas you might have left the office at 5 p.m. one day, people can be now emailing you at 10 p.m. And so there's this constant drive to be like, I should be doing more, I should be doing more, I should be doing more, which is something that most women struggle with anyway.
yeah, that's massive. I mean, I have to say, I've even removed Facebook and Messenger off my
It's
mobile
huge. Yes. I did the same.
because it's like, no, when I'm working, that's my work. And then if you're going to send me a notification, then I will deal with it tomorrow when I open up my laptop again. Because yeah, I agree with that. It does seem constant, whether it's WhatsApp or a DM or an email or this. We just seem to be constantly bombarded.
And
So
we don't
yeah,
always
this is
think
quite
about
a
it
new
even.
thing.
Like it's one message, it's one email. Like how bad is it until you realize that you're always working and you're never working, right? It sort of creates this weird reality where you're never really focused on anything that you're doing, but you're also not focused on anything that you're doing, and so you're kind of just in this weird limbo.
Right. So what would be the sort of advice for people who are approaching that kind of uh, burnout? Is it to just do less?
So I think that's one of the actual fears for people who are approaching burnout, right? Because it's like, I hear this a lot, like, do I need to just leave my job? Do I need
Mm,
to just, and the reality is that if we don't understand the underlying factors, right? If we don't look at the people pleasing, the poor boundaries we set in the past, how we show up as perfectionists, you can leave your job, you can run away, you can like say bye to your family and run away to like a remote island. Like those issues are you'll find a
follow
way to be
you.
a perfectionist wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't always think that it's about doing less, nor do I think that it's about, a lot of the people who will just tell you just time block better. Just wake up at 5 a.m. Just find, just it's not about doing more and it's not about doing less. It's actually about being able to look inwards and say, okay, what are the things that I want to do? Right? And start from there. Who am I and what do I want to do? What is the impact that I want to have? Because sometimes we stay so stuck on the what. And the example that I give is obviously, when I said I have 5-year-old twins, I have another son, I'm a runner, right? If I stay stuck on the idea that I'm a runner for exercise, I've had high-risk pregnancies. I've had postpartum. I've had another pregnancy. Like, there are times where running wasn't accessible to me. But often when we stay stuck on the what, when we don't focus on, okay, but why do I run in the first place? What does that give to me? Why am I doing it? That's where we can get flexibility, right? That's where we can get. And so the example, people who are burning out because they're trying to make a beautiful gourmet home cooked meal every day for their family, right? And trying to eat and why are you doing that? Right? For me, if my answer, and yes, like by training, I'm a dietitian, so there's that too. But if I'm saying, why do I want to make a meal for my family? It's because I think it's a beautiful experience when we all get to sit together. Okay, but like that can be done over pizza too. Right? You can sit together over pizza. And that doesn't have to be the shortcut that you want to take. That doesn't have to be the change that you want to make. It's just always important to really recognize that so often we stay stuck on the what, but we do things for the why, right? So that could save me 30 minutes of making dinner if I was to order pizza every night. And and the why that I was doing it was just to sit around with my family.
Right. Okay. That makes I suppose it's all about balance and I suppose prioritizing rather than, doing everything for everybody all the time. There's got to remember there's only so many hours in a day, and getting up an hour earlier, maybe temporarily, just to do one particular thing. But again, if you're going to be doing that long term, well, there's you're going to hit burnout, aren't you?
Yeah, totally.
So, why do you think that? Why is it that so many women almost actually set their lives up that that it's gonna lead to burnout anyway?
I don't know necessarily that it's how we set our lives up versus how we just see the lives that are handed to us, right? And sort of the ways that things are done. I think very often we use old definitions for things that we don't really believe in. And so what I mean by that is, what does success look like? What does excellence look like? What does a successful woman look like? What does a good mother look like? Without thinking about it, as I say those things, even through your head right now, there might be
There's an image.
Totally. And so sometimes we operate from that place, even if it's not what we believe in. When I do, coaching, and I give corporate talks as well. And one of the images that I like holding up is a picture of me covered in like spit up with my son and a picture of Jennifer Lopez at the Super Bowl, and ask, who's a good mom and who's doing really well in their career. And again, there's a split second, like, okay, the one covered in spit up, most people will say is the good mother, right? Because like that's what moms are supposed to do.
Yeah.
And who's doing really well in their career? The one who's like at the freaking Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
And so, but until we sort of bring those thoughts to the forefront, until we can be really clear for ourselves about those old definitions that we're using, we can't really change them. And what we don't always realize is also that our brains love definitions. They love absolutes. They love black and white. And so, when we don't have one, when you haven't decided who you are, what your values are, how you want to live your life, you're very prone to osmosis of what other people are thinking or what you see other people doing. You see your mom acting like a daughter in this way. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do as a daughter. You see your boss working that way. That's what I'm supposed to be in my professional career. We're just really susceptible to osmosis because we like definite, solutions, black and white things. Okay, these are the rules. This is how I do it, even if it doesn't feel good while we're doing it.
Right. And so it's this comparison thing. I mean, I suppose that's one thing I've tried to sort of, raise my daughters is to just, if you could learn this now, you'll be fine, to not worry what other people think of you,
Yeah.
and stop that. You're beautifully perfect in, whatever it is that you do. But yeah, we just live in a world where there's just so much judgment, isn't there?
Yeah, totally. And I think that, like I was joking over winter break, we were making banana bread, as one does over winter break, with my kids, and my daughter turned to me and she goes, "Mommy, just because you open the bananas this way doesn't mean that I have to do that, right? I'm allowed to like find my own ways of doing things." And I was like, "Well, this is the peak of my parenting existence, that yes, absolutely, you are allowed to do things exactly how you like." And that understanding, and I pointed this out to a lot of the clients that I'm working with, because that's a conversation that a lot of us just didn't have, right? That might
Mm,
have been how our parents felt. Like that might have been what my mom was hoping to pass down to me. But those explicit conversations have to come with like a very explicit understanding that we have. Can't be these
yeah,
subconscious sort of thoughts, but really like coming into fully embodying everybody can do things in their own way,
yes.
um, is the only way that we pass that down also.
100%. But just what you just said there, these things are normally unconscious.
Yeah.
So, I've caught myself in the past, and I'll say something in response to something, and I think, I sound like my mother,
Yeah.
because it was an unconscious thought.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting from you there is we've all got to become a little bit more conscious.
Yes. But I think it also comes with like, to use that example of you doing that, if it was something that you liked and, you know, to your I'm sure your mother's a lovely person.
Cheers,
But
cheers.
when you're saying like, "Oh, I sound like my mother," if it's something that you said and you were like, "Huh, like I wonder," the what we normally do is go, "Oh my god, I can't believe I said that. I didn't mean to say that." When in reality, it's just sort of like, I wonder where, if we can go from like condemnation of ourselves to curiosity of like, wonder where that came from. Because like
Yeah,
I don't really think that, but that's interesting that that came out of my mouth, right? Um,
yeah.
that's where often we learn in retrospect before we can then
Mm.
put it into practice prospectively.
Right. So it is being aware of
Yeah.
those automatic responses that have obviously
Yeah.
come from your upbringing
Yep.
and you're passing down. But I suppose if people are just doing it naturally, again, without being conscious, it's just an unconscious thing that they're just passing past. But once you're
Yeah.
aware, I suppose it's awareness is step one, I suppose,
Yeah.
like with anything. And then you can think, oh yeah, actually, yeah, why am I saying that?
Yeah.
That's just something I've heard. And is it actually true?
So normally what happens is it's totally subconscious, but then you say it once and then you say it again. And then your brain starts categorizing, oh, like this is the thing that we clearly believe because we've now said
Mm.
it 12 times, right? Or you say it once and then you go, "Oh my god, I'm the worst human being in the world. How did I let that come out of my mouth? Oh my god, that's so embarrassing." And then you just try and cover up for it, and like you never acknowledge it again, right? So, and neither of those helps because the next time that it happens, you're likely going to say it again because it's just subconsciously how you're programmed. So,
Mm.
when we can really step out of like the "Oh my god, I can't believe I just did that," or just not, considering it or not really thinking about it at all, just moving into that curiosity of like, I wonder why I said that when that seems totally not in line with my values.
Right. So really asking yourself
Mhm.
a question.
Yeah.
I suppose that does bring you into the present moment, brings you into that very conscious to actually think about it, weigh it up. Is that really serving or not serving?
Yep.
And then you can make a choice to change that. I suppose without having that initial thought process to actually stop and think,
Yeah.
it's not going to change because you are on autopilot. I mean, I get it. We all go about the majority of our day on autopilot through our past habitual patterns. But I find it really interesting that. Um, so really, one thing you've said there is, and I agree, it's just as bad. Is that otherwise you can condemn yourself.
Yes.
So then that's like blaming us, and then that's not any good either
Yeah.
because that's negative self-talk. It's just quite fascinating how our minds work and how we do come out with these things that we've just heard around, but actually haven't thought about it. So it's
Yeah.
actually a thought that's come in from outside of ourselves, and we've just
And that's why a lot of the work is really just making yourself aware of all of these, like, because we're so quick to go straight from, you know, I'm not doing enough or I should be doing more to like, there must just be something wrong with me. Like, I'm just a defective human, like, as I'm burning out, right?
mm,
Without even ever making the link between, okay, what else are the factors that are at play? What else is going on? Like bringing all of these, what assumptions am I making, right? Or like old assumptions am I making, right? That Jennifer Lopez and like the picture of me example. Some of those things you would never think of until we start exploring them, right?
mm,
You might look at it and just be like, "Oh my god, I'm so jealous of Jennifer Lopez who got to be at the Super Bowl." Like what, whatever it is, or subconsciously see like a mom carrying her baby with spit up on her shirt and be like, "Oh, she's a good mom because she's like clearly attentive and holding all the things." But we
mm,
don't always think that consciously. And so when
mm.
we can actually start exploring that consciously, it starts allowing us to be curious about those questions and curious about our answers to them. And are they really the ones that we want to keep?
Right. So you're really empowering people. So I
Mhm.
mean, like, how do you help women so that they realize that they feel more empowered to take, because they've got to take control of their lives.
They do. So it's really, it's a very loaded question. So because I have a 12-week program where we do, no, but the reality is really just starting to take ownership of some of these things, right? I think that sometimes we are we are conditioned and we sort of put ourselves in the back seat. What am I going to do? My job. I had one client who was like, I don't really know how you can help me like get more time in my day because I'm a nurse who has, works 12-hour shifts, right? Like there's just nothing I can do. Like it's outside of my control. And in like week 3 of us working together, she was like, I have so much more space in my day. Like I've
Mm,
created, so it's really just understanding like where we're giving away too much of our power to, this is just what it is. I work 12 hours. My kids are young. My husband's out a lot. My parents really need me. My synagogue or like church really needs me. Like all of these things that we sort of tell ourselves and feel really real as reasons
mm,
that like it's just totally beyond my control. Starting to shift that back inward to look at where we are actually making choices, right? Because even if we don't
mm,
decide something, like we're always making choices of where to spend our time, and just understanding like where we're letting that time seep away. um and whether or not just even again bringing those to the conscious level so that we can then explore, like, do we really want to continue spending our time in this way? Is
mm.
the times that we're spending really in line with our values? And also simplifying a lot of practices. So I have like a 2-step decision making framework that all of my clients can use, which really makes a lot of the 10 million decisions we make every day much simpler to make, easier, more streamlined. So we're not sort of letting all of our energy just seep out into, various places.
Right. And that makes sense. That I mean, I used to think, oh, I'm just so busy. I'm so busy. I was busy being busy,
Yeah.
not necessarily so productive. And
Yes.
actually, I found when I did take, because I would be one of those really making excuses. I haven't
Yeah.
got time to meditate. I haven't got time to do this. Weirdly, yeah, when I started to make the time, because it's priorities, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
suppose going through your day, even if you're working 12 hours, there must be times in the day
Yeah.
where you can either have a break or there's got to be some way around that. But yeah, I suppose it's we're too quick to judge, and not just others. From what you sort of shared there, it's actually more to do with how we judge ourselves.
Yeah. And also we're really quick to get comfortable somewhere, even that feels really uncomfortable. Right?
Mm,
Like, we're quick to, stay in the little sort of, like, box that we've put ourselves in, even if it feels like, we're sort of burning out in the process because it's what we know. And so that's a
mm,
really important thing for, for people to understand also is just change feels uncomfortable. And so a lot of women will do something differently, and they'll either feel guilty or it'll feel really uncomfortable. And they use both those things as signs to totally retreat back into what they were doing before, when really that's just a normal process of, doing something differently. Is You'll feel guilty if you take time for yourself, if you start, upsetting people or not doing everything that they thought you should do, as you shift out of people pleasing. And
Mhm.
it can feel really uncomfortable to make change.
But that's the thing, isn't it? I think that's what many people seem to be resistant against
Yes.
change.
Yes.
It's not the thing, it's just the fact that it's different. The change
Exactly. Right.
is the resistance quite often,
Yep.
even if it's going to help them further down the road. But I mean, it's just such a fascinating subject that why we do stay in this comfort zone, even if the comfort zone isn't very nice, a good
Yeah.
place to be. But like you said, doing something differently, of course it's going to, I suppose, again, maybe it's just awareness, knowing that it's going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning
Yeah.
because it's different. But where do you think this stems from, though? Why, as human beings, are we just, we just, our brain just, I know it likes to keep us safe, but it's quite a weird system, isn't it, to think that we could be happier, doing better, more productive, more patient mums, all
And we
these
don't.
things, all the
Yeah.
things that we want, if we actually became comfortable being uncomfortable, I suppose.
So, I mean, it really is like biological, in that, if you look back at any animal pack, right? Anyone who stands away from the pack, if you're a lone wolf, like, you get killed by whatever predator is going to come out. You're safe in a pack. And so it's always, for all of us, anyone who wants to say, hey, maybe I want to do something a little bit differently. And it doesn't have to be differently, like, way totally different than everybody else's. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to fold my clothes as soon as I take them out of the dryer. Right? Like, that's
I'm not even going to turn my laptop around. I've got, from the tumble
right?
dryer, I've
Because
got a
that's
pile on the sofa. I
exactly, because
haven't
that's what
folded
you're
them.
supposed to do, right? We're supposed to do that as functioning humans. We're like, that's what we're supposed to do. So I'm not even talking like it's, a massive thing. And so often we just see doing that as, but then I'm gonna be different than everybody else, and then I'm gonna, like, be gonna be shunned by society. And if you're shunned by society, then you die. Even
Mm,
though it's taking your clothes out of the dryer an hour later, and you're not an animal in the wilderness, right?
yeah.
Is number one.
Yeah, it's not a problem. They can stay there. In fact, I might not even fold them till tomorrow. Do you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that none of us are, I posted this, I think last week, that the number one thing that I see holding the people that I'm coaching back is just that none of them and none of us, like, it's a skill that I had to learn also, to have my own back during failure, right? We see any
Mm,
failure, and by failure, I mean any setback, anything that you do that doesn't go 100% according to plan, which, like, whatever does, as I'm a failure. I shouldn't have done this. I'm stupid for doing this. I should have just done what I was doing before. And so, in, like, when we know that if we fail, that's what we're going to put ourselves through, it's a heck of a lot easier to stay in what we're already doing. Right? It's like going to a
mm,
restaurant and you order the same thing every time. That's like, it's good. It's good. It's not like the best meal ever, but it's good. But there's another dish that you want to order, but it might be incredible or it might be terrible. And so do you take the
mm.
risk of it incredible or terrible, or do you just stay with, like, whatever, it's fine.
The norm.
Yeah.
So it's all based on fear. That's what
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah.
from what you're saying there. It's all fear based.
Yeah.
Life, it doesn't have to be like that, does it?
It doesn't. It definitely does not.
So with burnout, obviously it doesn't happen overnight.
Yep.
It doesn't just, you wake up one day and suddenly you're in burnout. So there's some kind of cycle. So can you share with the audience a little bit about that?
So what
What
I
that
see as a
is?
typical cycle of happening is, um, that a lot of the women that I'm coaching tend to find themselves in is way overdoing, right? It can't just be like, cooking dinner. It has to be a 6-course dinner. It has to be like, you have to be the best at your firm. You have to be the mom of the year. It has to be bento box style lunches, not just like a cream cheese sandwich thrown in the bag. Way overdoing it, feeling resentful of the fact that you're doing it and people don't appreciate you enough, and you're doing it all, whether it's your boss or whether it's your mother or your best friend or your kids or like, the people at your like YMCA, whoever it is, they don't appreciate it enough. Pulling back, so like not doing as much for a minute and then feeling incredibly guilty and shameful that you're not doing enough. And so putting that whole thing into overdrive,
Ah,
right? And then when we go into overdrive, that becomes our new baseline. We can't go further, like lower than that. And so we're just
right.
continuously upping the ante for ourselves, in addition to being susceptible to things like social media and other places where we see people upping the ante for each other. And then we just eventually burn ourselves out.
It's exhausting. Sounds exhausting.
You're like, that's exhausting, even just listening to it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. But I've got me. I've been there.
Yeah.
I left the fitness industry because of burnout. Because no, I didn't want to just teach even 6 classes a week. No, I'm doing 18, or I think at one point 23, and it's like,
And then it's your own workouts on top of that.
yeah, it's not sustainable. We seem to. It sounds like we put just too much on ourselves, and it's just a natural, man. If it's not sustainable, you are going to burn out, and then you're going to suffer.
I think it's really just that, like, none of us, so many people stay stuck in not deciding what they should be paying attention to on their own. And so then they just try and pay attention to everything and do everything without ever, there's a reason, even in a professional sense, that a surgeon is a surgeon and a tailor is a tailor. And, like that the person who makes like the little like widgets that make toilet flushes does that because they can't do all 3 of those jobs well, right? But yet we expect ourselves to do everything and be everything for everyone at all times and do it well, and then question why we're burning out.
So how do people, how do you actually break that? If you're in that cycle, and if the listeners can recognize that they're in that cycle, how do they break it?
So, I mean, number one is getting really mindful. Like, one of the questions that I love asking my clients is, again, like, going back to our conversation before of whose voice am I hearing, right? When we're in that overdoing, who's telling you to do it, and also why are you doing it, right? And if the answer for you doing anything, like, I don't celebrate Christmas, but I see like lots of, the beautiful decorations and if you love doing that, if that brings you like the most incredible joy to decorate your entire house and then have to take down all of the decorations and organize them and categorize them, which sounds like the biggest nightmare I've ever heard. But if you love it, do it, right? Like, it's just becoming really clear, and everything. Like, don't be afraid to ask yourself why. Like, don't assume that you know why you're doing something. Start getting comfortable asking yourself the question, why am I doing this? Like, and if the answer is, I genuinely love it. Okay. For some things, like, I'm like, I have a 2-year-old. I do diaper duty. I don't love diaper duty, but I like, that's in line with my values, right? So I always ask the question, does it make you happy, or do you enjoy doing it, or is it in line with your values, right? Like, doing diapers is, I am a present mom. I would like to take good care of my children, right? So I cannot like changing a diaper and happily do it, knowing that it's in line with my values. And if it's neither of those things, really asking yourself, like, why is it on your schedule then?
Again, because I suppose we think we should be doing something all the time. We think that's what I must do. That
Exactly.
rather than if it's there's always going to be jobs, right? Yeah, nobody. You don't want to change diapers, but who's going to change them for your child?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's always going to be certain jobs that we'd rather not do, but it's life, and we've just got to get on and do it.
And that's a really important piece of it, is that, like, just because we beat burnout doesn't mean that, suddenly and I say that with creating life that you love doesn't mean you love every single minute of it, right? A life that you love still
I
sometimes
don't like
has
washing
moments
up,
where,
but if
yeah,
they don't,
like
if they don't get clean, then we're not going to have any clean plates to eat
exactly,
on, and
right?
it's
Not
going to
every
get
single moment.
dirty. And
We're not like you're gonna be sitting there and like birds are gonna come in and fold your laundry and wash your dishes.
oh,
No,
I'm very
no. I've
disappointed
tried
now
it. I've
because
opened
I'm
my
not
windows.
doing
They
it.
haven't come yet. Maybe there's still hope. So I don't want ever want to like I'm not someone who sort of promotes like toxic positivity or like it's just going to be beautiful sunshine and rainbows on the other side. Life is still life, but there's a difference between being able to do things that don't feel like great all the time and be connected to them, right? Like
Mm,
changing a diaper is not anyone's favorite activity, but I can feel connected to doing that activity, being like, yes, this is in line with my values. This is something that I've signed up to do, right? In a way that feels good to me. And that's really the difference. Feeling like you're forced to do things that you don't really care about and other people don't even appreciate when you do them is a really, a perfect recipe for resentment and burnout. And
mm,
doing things that can sometimes feel challenging and are in line with the values that you hold, and even if they're not your favorite, you can see the benefit in doing them, like, can be a part of a life that you enjoy.
mm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's funny that we all know that we need to we, people need to practice gratitude, and
Yeah.
I say to my girls, this is a universal law, but I totally get it. Like
Yeah.
when the kids are, I don't know, we've taken them for a really nice day out, and it's moan, 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 and you think, why have I bothered? It doesn't
Totally.
want you to do it
Right.
again because of
But that's a perfect example because sometimes it is like, well, why did you do it? Right? Like if they would have been happy with the Amazon box, not the beautiful toy that was inside, why did you buy the box? Why would you buy
yeah.
the toy? So that you could feel good? Or did you just like you thought they would enjoy it and they didn't and like, okay, that sucks.
Yes,
Right? And
you
so
think there are certain things. I mean, and I know I've done that in the past. I can remember again. I think first child, especially. I can remember. So my eldest is just 23. So when she was one, she was the first child in our whole family. So very spoiled. I can remember just looking around. It's her first birthday, just thinking, which is just it's just too much stuff. Like,
yeah,
why do we do it? And you're so right. Again, we think we should. It's my
yeah.
baby, and I've got to spend this, and I've got to do this. And we joke about it now because my second daughter literally got no. It's like
I'm a
she's not
fourth
going to
kid.
remember it.
I'm a
Sorry,
fourth kid. So I hear you.
it's like sorry, darling. Well, she doesn't remember. She only hears me speaking about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we didn't go all in because you were one. What can you remember? Can you
Exactly.
remember?
Yeah.
What is the point? It's not for you. It is for us. So I get that, and I even again, bless her, the oldest was spoiled. We did go back to Euro Disney, but I can remember taking her to Euro Disney, and this is just a prime example of that. Because you're all excited, and you think, oh, this is what we should be doing,
Yeah.
and all of the children's rides she was scared of because they were all on the darker side of things. If it was Pinocchio, it was in the woods. If it was Snow White, it was in the woods. It was all the dark side. So
Yeah.
she was scared of everything apart from the It's a Small World. That, oh my goodness,
Yes.
you don't really enjoy it. She's really too young to enjoy it. She can only remember it because she's watched the videos of
Yeah.
you being there. Like, why did we do it?
You're like, by God, we will enjoy this because we spent money and we're here.
I mean, it's when you look back, you just think, yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, we took them later on when they're older and they can actually enjoy it. But yeah, I can
Yeah.
remember back from being a young mum, and you just so much pressure on you that you think you should do this and you've got to create Christmas as this mystical, magical, and way too much pressure on us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they can't remember.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's really where it comes down to is like sometimes we say, like, well, I'm doing it for my kids. And I'm like, are you doing
Mm.
it for them or are you doing it because you think that that's what you're supposed to do for them, right? And
Oh,
again, like with a vein of curiosity, not with and you're a terrible person if you're doing it for you, but just
mm,
to bring attention because sometimes, when you think, well, I'm doing this for my kids, um, it's impossible to stop because
mm.
oh, they love the Christmas and they love the beautiful decorations and they love what I do and they love like, and they don't actually care. Right?
Mm,
And so they'd be just as happy if you just had like, I don't know why I keep on using Christmas tree example, but like a bare Christmas tree and like everyone was more relaxed,
yes.
right? And so just being able to start asking those questions with just curiosity, like who are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Is and it is like if it's, I'm making a home cooked dinner every night. Why? Because that's what I heard I was supposed to do, but I actually hate cooking and the food isn't even good and nobody wants to eat it. Like, okay, well then there's other ways to have a family meal happen, right?
Right.
There's other ways to make anything happen that don't have to be you doing it in a way that you hate.
Right. And then everybody's happy. So then
Mhm.
you don't get the whiny kids
Yep.
and you're feeling resentful because you've done this thing that they didn't even want anyway. It's yeah, so I've never even thought about it before like that until you've said that, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, yes, I've done that. I've done
Yeah.
that. Well, I'm sure
Been there, done that.
more occasions as
Yeah.
well. So that, yeah, that's obviously an unconscious thing that we just think we, again, I suppose it is. I never thought was one of those people that wanted to keep up with the Joneses, but obviously on some level I
Yeah.
was, because that's what
Totally.
I thought I should do. I've got to do this because my child is now this age, and
Yeah.
no, we really need to do this. And
And it
yeah,
really
way
is
too
just
much
all of
fun.
those definitions, right? It comes down to like, what are we defining? And just even understanding that. A good mother is
Mm,
the one who takes her, good parents are the ones who take to Euro Disney or who do whatever it is, or when they're 5, they're in skating lessons, or when they're 7 or in, all of those things, just working really to, and this is where I work with clients, is just bringing all of that conscious, bringing all of the people pleasing, like where did we learn that conscious?
mm.
All the, the perfectionism, all of that, like how does that really show up for you? Because sometimes these things just show up in ways that we totally don't understand because we just don't think about it.
Well, we've never thought. So that's because no one's ever asked us the question.
Yeah.
So that just again proves the point that we really are, even when we think we are more conscious, we're still doing a
Yep.
certain part through programming from things that we've learned, heard, been told once upon a time,
Yeah.
way back then, and we are acting in that way. So it's just, I bet you save a lot of hours for people.
I always say that like it's the best way to get, I'm running a workshop next week on the 3 things that are really stealing your time. And I'm like, I promise you will get hours back in your day.
Fantastic, because that is it. I mean, we just, I suppose when if we do really specifically look at things and look back and where your time is actually spent, not what you think it is when you start your day, when you
Yeah.
actually look back. And yeah, I mean, I know with myself in the past when I was sort of, thought I was just busy being busy. If I look back, it's actually, what have you actually done?
Totally.
Busy procrastinating.
Exactly. Busy procrastinating, busy judging yourself, busy thinking about how you should be doing things, but you're not, busy being too overwhelmed to even start
Yes,
because there's so many things on your to-do list. Totally.
massive.
Judging the things that you're doing because you're like, should I really be doing this now or should I be working on something else? Yeah, there's lots we spend our
Oh,
time, wasting when we
it,
feel really busy.
it's funny. See, when you put it like that, it's like we are actually quite crazy creatures, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. I mean, honestly, I mean, I know none of us do it deliberately and we don't do it consciously, but actually, when you look back and think about it, yeah, man, we waste a lot of time judging ourselves and yeah, just wasting time.
Totally.
So, to the listeners, if you want to save some time, you want to get a few hours back, if you think you've got none
Yeah.
free, then maybe you need to take a look and have a think about that.
Yeah.
So, to the listeners, if they can't see any of your links and can't see any of the writing, if they're just listening in, how do they find you?
So the easiest way to find me is on Instagram. It's Ahuva, which is Ahuva, Hershkop, which is Hershkop. I spend lots of times there, and in my bio, you can find links to everything else that, I have. I am running a free workshop next week on the top 3 things that are stealing all of your time as a high achiever and how to get them back. So I run lots of, fun free workshops and work with the women inside my 12-week coaching program, which is called the Unapologetic Living Code, on how to ditch the people-pleasing, perfectionism, and poor boundaries that are keeping you stuck.
Fantastic. And can you give some examples of some of the transformations that, because why would somebody want to come on that course? What's the promise at the end of the 12 weeks?
It's so fun because it's so individual. I have one client who I'm working with who, really realized even that she's going through fertility treatments while, working in like 12-hour days, and was feeling incredibly guilty about how her fertility treatments were going and becoming a mother and that whole stress, until she was really able to start redefining for herself what that meant and what she was willing to do for that process, right? Instead of being handed what you should do, and after 2 months you should do this, and people's expectations around what a motherhood journey looks like. I have another client who, really came to me honestly because she felt really lost in motherhood. She was sort of like, I don't really know who I am anymore. I'm just sort of like the person who does all of these things. And after, a couple of weeks into the call, she even messaged me something as simple as like, I put on a show for my kids and I'm eating dinner with a glass of wine quietly by myself. Like, I'm enjoying my time again. I'm taking 10 minutes to eat my dinner instead of like trying to scarf it down over the counter. So not everything is necessarily professional. Not everything is necessarily specific to like time management, but it really is being able, and these are 2 people who felt really stuck because they couldn't leave their jobs. They couldn't just, up and leave their kids to get more time. But it really is understanding like where we can create that joy in your life again, really find those times so that you don't constantly feel like you're dragging yourself out of bed in the morning and like falling into bed at the end of the night, but you're actually living your life throughout the day.
Which is what everybody wants, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that is what we all want. We I suppose there's just too much pressure these days. People working too long hours. I mean, like you said, I didn't realise that things have got worse from lockdown.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally struggled with lockdown. Not very good with being caged up. But I mean, yeah, you're right. It is. There are so many ways to contact people. There are so many, and again, the expectations, you mentioned that word earlier, there's so much expectations on us that people think if they can even see that I might have my laptop open, I might have a tab open for Facebook,
Yep.
but I'm recording a show or
Exactly.
I'm on a Zoom call. And then some people, if they don't understand, they'll take offense because they can see, why haven't you just answered me? Because they
Yeah.
want an answer now. And it's
Totally.
like, I can't get to you now, or get to you
Totally.
later.
Yep.
And I suppose again that is maybe this hasn't been like this for too long, but
Yeah.
again, how long is it going to be sustainable with feeling like you do have to deal with it? Which is
Exactly.
exactly why I do have to sometimes put it back because I can't do stories on Facebook. But otherwise, then I just remove it again. I keep adding it on, taking it off, adding it on,
Yeah.
taking it off, because otherwise I will get caught, and then
Totally.
my whole life is Facebook, and it's like, no, this is my working hour. So really, what I hear from what you're sharing then is the same: is set your boundaries.
Yeah. And learn how to feel confident doing that.
And not feel guilty about setting boundaries. I
Exactly.
suppose.
Yeah.
Just goes to show it is, everything is around not your thoughts so much, but how you feel. It's
Yep.
all around how you feel or how things are making you feel, and
Mhm.
what an amazing effect that it's having on our lives.
Yeah.
So people coming to you, they're really feeling stuck, and when they leave, they're feeling
Free.
ah free. There you
Yeah.
go. There's
That's
the
what we're
word.
going for.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having
It's
me.
been brilliant talking to you, and I love what you're doing. And yeah, I probably needed you a while ago going through, but hopefully I won't go through burnout again.
I hope that you don't.
Yeah. And to everybody listening, if there's anybody out there, as you know, so I'm your host, Karen Roberts. We have a platform for coaches, consultants, therapists, and healers to get their message heard. If you've ever fancied having your own radio station or your own podcast channel, we will create it all for you. You'll have your own podcast website, personally branded to you, because it is just one method of getting your message out there, of growing your audience, of building influence within your audience. So if you're interested in any of that, you can get in touch, GarenRobertsCoaching.com. And I suppose it's all around just getting more clients, which is why we really do this show, is to share what people are doing, because what Ahuva's doing is something very, very specific, aimed at a certain segment of society, and she's really solving specific problems. And this title coach just doesn't really say it. Now, and even after talking to you today, I wouldn't have understood all of that, even just going through your bio. It just goes to show that we have to have these conversations to have a real understanding of what it is specifically that you do and what you're helping people with.
Absolutely.
Because, you never know. Your next client might be out there that's just listened in. So, yeah, wonderful. Thank you for your time. And the rest of you, I will be back, on Monday with a coffee with Karen. So, bye for now.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.